My boyfriend said I was overreacting after he secretly took $5,000 from my savings account until the bank froze his business in front of his friends. My name is Maren Caldwell. I'm 29 years old, and until a few months ago, I honestly believed I was building a stable life with a man who understood what trust meant. I was wrong. Ryan and I had been together for 3 years and living together for a year and a half when everything finally collapsed. From the outside, we looked solid, not flashy, not dramatic, just settled into each other's routines the way long relationships usually are. He knew how I liked my coffee before early shifts. I knew he hated folding laundry, but would spend 20 minutes scrubbing a sink until it looked brand new. We had shared grocery lists, shared furniture, shared exhaustion after long work days. But one thing we never shared was money. That was always my boundary. Not because I didn't love him. I did, more than I probably should have. But I grew up watching people lose stability overnight. I understood early that peace feels different when you know you can pay your own bills. I worked too hard to build that security just to treat it casually. I'm a union electrician. Good pay, long hours, the kind of job that leaves your hands sore even after a shower. I took every ugly shift I could get because I had a plan for my future. Not some fantasy life, just a small house with my name on the paperwork and enough quiet inside it to finally exhale. Ryan worked reception at a dental office. He was charming in a way that made people forgive him quickly. Patients loved him. He could make small talk with anyone. He had this easy warmth about him that made it hard to stay angry for long, which I think is part of why I ignored certain things for as long as I did. He made less than I did, so I covered more of the rent. That never bothered me. Relationships aren't always 50-50 financially. We split things based on income and handled the rest like adults. Separate accounts, separate savings, clear boundaries. Ryan used to joke about it sometimes. "You act like I'm going to rob you in your sleep," he laughed once while leaning against the fridge. I remember laughing too. "No," I said. "I just think adults should know what belongs to them." At the time, it felt harmless. Looking back now, it feels different. Funny how memory changes after someone finally crosses the line you spent years believing they never would. About 2 months before everything fell apart, Ryan reconnected with two old friends from high school, Nolan and Travis. Suddenly, they were everywhere in his life. Constant group chats, long lunches that turned into late nights, endless conversations about business ideas and getting out of the rat race. At first, I was honestly happy for him. Ryan had been restless for a while. Same job, same apartment, same routine every day. He kept talking about feeling behind in life while everyone else was building something bigger. So when Nolan and Travis showed up, talking about starting a mobile auto detailing business, Ryan latched onto it immediately. At first, it sounded harmless. Then it became obsessive. He started leaving business tabs open on his laptop. Equipment suppliers, branding agencies, portable detailing kits, water tanks, uniform mock-ups. One night he showed me black polo designs with silver embroidery like he was already running $1 million company. "What do you think?" he asked. "They look nice," I said carefully. "That's it? What do you want me to say?" "I want you to sound excited." I set my fork down and looked at him for a second before answering. "I'll get excited when there's an actual plan." His expression changed immediately. Not angry exactly, defensive. "You always do this." "Do what?" "You make everything sound impossible." "I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm asking practical questions." He rolled his eyes. "Nolan believes in me." That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. "I believe in you too," I said quietly. "I just don't think excitement replaces preparation." Ryan laughed under his breath and looked away. "You mean your money?" I stared at him. "Yes," I said slowly. "My money. The money I've been saving for a house." He looked irritated by that answer, which bothered me more than I admitted at the time. There was something underneath his expression I didn't fully recognize yet, something that felt less like disappointment and more like resentment. Over the next few weeks, little comments started slipping into conversations. Some people actually support their partner's dreams. Must be nice having enough money to play it safe forever. Not everyone wants to work for someone else their whole life. Individually, each comment sounded small enough to ignore. Together, they started building pressure inside the relationship like water behind a crack in a wall. I should have paid more attention to that feeling. The Thursday everything changed. I came home exhausted after a brutal shift. My shoulders ached, my hands smelled like metal and dust, and all I wanted was a shower and silence. Before I even took my boots off, I opened my banking app to check if my direct deposit had gone through. It had. But my savings balance was wrong. At first, I genuinely thought the app had glitched. I refreshed it twice. Still wrong. $5,000 missing. I felt my stomach drop so fast it almost made me dizzy. I opened the transaction history. ACH transfer. 2 days earlier. $5,000 exactly. To an account I didn't recognize. For one brief second, I thought someone had hacked me. Then my phone buzzed. Ryan. Hey babe, I borrowed $5,000 from your savings for the business. Nolan and Travis and I are finally getting started this week. I'll pay you back once we're profitable. Thanks for believing in us. Love you. I read the message 3 times before my brain fully accepted what it was saying. Borrowed from your savings for the business. I called him immediately. He answered, sounding cheerful. Hey, did you get my text? My voice came out quieter than I expected. How did you access my savings account? There was a short pause before he answered. Oh, I still had your login from when you were sick last year and asked me to check that payment, remember? That was one emergency. Okay, but don't make it sound creepy. You transferred $5,000 from my account. I borrowed it. You took it without asking? I told you. After you already moved it. He sighed dramatically. Marin, we live together. Why are you acting like I robbed a stranger? I remember standing there in the kitchen staring at the cabinets while something cold settled inside my chest. Because he genuinely didn't hear how wrong he sounded. You used my login information and transferred money from my savings account without permission. Because I knew you'd overthink it. That's theft, Ryan. He actually laughed. Jesus, you're being dramatic. We're partners. No, I said quietly. Not like this. His tone sharpened immediately. This business is going to make us money. You should be thanking me for investing in our future. Our future. Using my house fund. Without even speaking to me first. I stood there in work boots, covered in dust, listening to the man I loved explain why violating my boundaries was somehow ambition. For a second, I honestly wanted to scream at him. Instead, I took a breath. Entrepreneurship is great, I said calmly. He relaxed instantly, thinking I'd given in. Exactly. We'll talk when you get home. I'm meeting the guys to look at equipment tonight, so don't stay mad, okay? Love you. He hung up before I answered. I stayed in that kitchen for almost an hour afterward. The apartment looked exactly the same. His jacket by the door, his coffee mug in the sink, his shoes kicked under the table like they belonged there permanently. But something fundamental had shifted. Because suddenly I realized Ryan saw my savings account as something he could access if he wanted something badly enough. That thought changed the entire relationship in seconds. I opened my laptop and called the bank's fraud department. The woman on the phone sounded calm and professional in the way people do when they deal with panic every day. Can you confirm the transfer was unauthorized? I stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window before answering. Yes, I said quietly, it was unauthorized. Saying the words out loud made everything feel heavier somehow. The representative explained they could attempt to freeze the transfer before the funds fully cleared. While she spoke, my mind kept drifting backward through old moments I suddenly understood differently. Ryan joking about my savings. Ryan getting irritated when I questioned expensive ideas. Ryan acting personally offended every time I chose caution over excitement. At the time, I interpreted all of it generously because that's what love does. It softens warning signs until they barely look dangerous anymore. The bank managed to freeze part of the transfer before everything cleared. When the call ended, I walked into the bedroom and looked around slowly. His hoodie on the chair, his side of the closet, the framed lake photo from last summer where both of us looked genuinely happy. That was the confusing part. The good moments had been real too. People always act like betrayal should make the entire relationship feel fake afterward, but real heartbreak doesn't work that cleanly. Sometimes someone can love you and still hurt you terribly because love alone doesn't automatically create maturity, honesty, or respect. Around 11 that night, Ryan came home talking before he even fully walked through the door. Babe, you should have seen the equipment setup Nolan found. Then he saw me sitting at the kitchen table. His excitement disappeared immediately. What's wrong? I looked at him for a long moment. Really looked at him. Ryan was handsome in an effortless way that made him easy to forgive. Soft brown hair, crooked smile, warm eyes that usually made him seem harmless. Tonight he looked nervous. He didn't look guilty. He looked nervous. The bank froze the transfer, I said. His entire face changed. What? I reported it. The silence afterward felt enormous. You did what? You took money from my account without permission. I told you I was borrowing it. You informed me after it already happened. That's because you would have said no. Yes, I said evenly. I would have. Ryan stared at me like my honesty offended him personally. You seriously called the bank over this? You seriously stole from me over this? There you go with that word again. Because it's accurate. He started pacing around the kitchen. You're blowing this way out of proportion. No, I'm reacting exactly how someone reacts when their partner accesses their savings behind their back. We live together. And? We're building a future together. I laughed quietly before I could stop myself because suddenly I understood the problem so clearly. Ryan genuinely believed that sharing a life together meant my boundaries no longer mattered. You know what hurts the most? I asked. What? You never even thought I deserved a conversation first. His expression shifted briefly, and what I saw there wasn't regret. It was annoyance. Like my reaction was the real inconvenience here. I knew you'd make it negative, he muttered. That sentence explained more than he realized. Ryan had already decided his desire mattered more than my right to choose. Once someone convinces themselves of that internally, they stop seeing your boundaries as real. They become obstacles instead. You knew I'd say no, I said quietly, because you never support anything I want. I support reality. You support control. That one stayed with me. Not because it was true, because I suddenly realized how he probably described me to other people whenever I wasn't around. Controlling, negative, unsupportive. I could suddenly hear the way he probably talked about me when I wasn't around. I realized Ryan had probably been painting me as the difficult one in his head for a long time. Maybe that made what he did easier for him to justify. Ryan sat across from me and rubbed both hands through his hair. This business could actually work, he said. Nolan already has clients lined up. Travis found a van lease. We just needed startup money quickly. So you took mine. Oh my God. There isn't a softer word for what happened. We were going to pay you back. And if the business failed? He didn't answer. That silence told me more than anything else could have. The way he talked about the money scared me more than the amount itself. He genuinely sounded like he thought he had a right to it. Then he looked up and said something I still think about sometimes. I honestly thought I misheard him. You embarrassed me in front of them. I stared at him. What? The business account froze while we were setting things up. He wasn't upset about what he did. He was upset that his friends saw consequences happen in real time. You embarrassed me. That was the moment something inside me finally stopped trying to protect the relationship. Not dramatically, more quietly than that. Like a rope finally snapping after too much tension. I think you should sleep on the couch tonight, I said. Ryan looked stunned. You're serious? Yes. You're choosing money over us. No, I said softly. You made that choice already. He slept on the couch that night, though I don't think either of us really slept. Around 2 a.m, I walked into the kitchen for water and found him sitting in the dark staring at his phone. He looked exhausted, but there was still something defensive in his face that unsettled me deeply. What unsettled me most wasn't even the money anymore. It was how convinced Ryan still sounded that he'd done nothing wrong. The next morning, he left before I woke up. At work, I tried to focus, but my brain kept replaying the same conversations over and over. I kept hearing the same arguments replay in my head, over and over, until they barely even sounded like love anymore. By lunch, my phone started ringing repeatedly. My phone kept vibrating nonstop with calls from Ryan. Finally, I answered. The bank called me, he said immediately. And? They're saying there's a fraud investigation attached to the transfer. Yes. Marin, this is serious. I almost laughed. Only now did it feel serious to him. Not when he emptied my savings. Not when he lied. Only now, when consequences entered his life personally. You could have handled this privately, he said. We tried handling it privately. You laughed at me. That's not what happened. I used to think gaslighting was one of those dramatic internet words people overused. Then I started hearing Ryan rewrite conversations I knew had happened. Yes, I said calmly. That is what happened. He exhaled hard. They're asking questions about the business account. Nolan and Travis are freaking out. I imagine they are. You need to call the bank back. No. His voice softened then. Please. For a second, I heard the version of him I fell in love with. Vulnerable, charming, careful with his tone. But sincerity without responsibility eventually starts sounding hollow. Then he admitted they had already spent around $3,000. On what? Equipment, supplies, branding. Branding. That word made me physically sick. While I was working overtime trying to build a future, Ryan had been buying embroidered polos and business logos using money he stole from me. You spent my house fund on branding? We needed to look professional. I leaned against the unfinished wall behind me at work and closed my eyes. Ryan was treating this whole thing like a shortcut. Meanwhile, I was still the one working overtime trying to keep our real life stable. That evening, I changed every password I had. Bank accounts, email, utilities, everything. Halfway through setting up two-factor authentication, I suddenly started crying at the kitchen table. Not dramatic sobbing, just exhausted tears from realizing the person who once knew your coffee order is now someone you need protection from. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Hi, is this Marin? Yes. This is Nolan. I sat up straighter immediately. We need to talk, he said quietly. I don't think Ryan told us the same story he told you. I met Nolan the next evening at a coffee shop downtown. He looked uncomfortable before I even sat down. Ryan told us you approved the money, he admitted. I stared at him. He said what? He told Travis and me that you agreed to invest but didn't want to be publicly involved. Then Nolan showed me the fake text screenshots. My name, fake message bubbles, fake approval. For a second, I honestly couldn't breathe. Seeing fake words attached to your identity feels violating in a strange, deeply personal way. Like someone forced your voice into a conversation you never had. That's fake, I said immediately. Nolan nodded. I figured that out yesterday. I showed him my real messages with Ryan. There was nothing approving the transfer, nothing even close. The only business-related texts from me were reminders about insurance, licensing, and planning. Nolan looked sick after comparing both phones. Jesus, he muttered. Then he admitted Ryan had been pushing everyone to spend quickly before the opportunity disappeared. Suddenly, everything made sense. The more Nolan talked, the more I realized Ryan had probably known this would eventually blow up. That was why he kept pushing everyone to move so fast. Spend the money fast enough, and maybe it becomes irreversible. That kind of thinking scared me deeply because it meant this wasn't panic anymore. It was strategy. Nolan also admitted Ryan had been telling people I overreacted. Of course he was. Ryan probably really did believe I betrayed him. That was the strange part. Eventually, I asked the question I'd been avoiding. Did he ever sound guilty? Nolan hesitated too long before answering. No, he admitted quietly, mostly angry. That answer hurt more than I expected, because by then I already knew Ryan had lied. But hearing that he still centered his own frustration instead of the damage he caused finally shattered whatever hope I had left. When I got home that night, Ryan was waiting. I met Nolan, I told him immediately. His entire body stiffened. What did he say? That you lied to everyone. Ryan looked away instantly. He didn't look remorseful. He looked cornered. Even after the bank investigation and fake messages, he still spoke about everything like it had become inconvenient instead of wrong. You forged texts, I said. I simplified things. I actually laughed at that because the sentence sounded unbelievable out loud. You know, he said finally, I wouldn't have done any of this if you supported me from the beginning. I could hear it underneath everything he was saying. Somehow this was becoming my fault too. I looked at him for a long moment before answering. You had other options, Ryan. You could have saved your own money, asked for a loan, built a real plan, waited. We didn't have time. You mean you didn't have patience? Then he said something that finally explained the resentment underneath everything. You always act like you're better than everyone because you have your life together. I stared at him carefully, and suddenly I understood. I think Ryan was exhausted from feeling behind everyone else all the time. My stability reminded him of what he lacked, and over time he started treating my discipline like an insult instead of a quality. I never judged you for making less money, I said quietly. You didn't have to say it out loud. There was so much bitterness in that sentence it almost stunned me. Then I asked the question sitting heavily in my chest. Did you ever plan on telling me before taking the money? Ryan hesitated. That hesitation answered everything. You never would have agreed to it. Yes, I said, I would have. He looked frustrated by that answer, which somehow made everything even sadder, because Ryan genuinely believed wanting something badly enough excused how he got it. I think that was the moment I realized nothing about this was temporary. Finally, after a long silence, I said the thing I had been avoiding internally for days. You need to move out. His face changed instantly. You're ending 3 years over one mistake? I looked at him quietly. No, I'm ending this because I finally understand who you become when you think you deserve something. He moved out 3 days later while I was at work. There was no screaming or dramatic goodbye, just cardboard boxes and empty closets. When I came home afterward, the apartment felt larger in a lonely way. His shoes were gone. His side of the bathroom counter was empty. The second pillow on the bed looked untouched. That was the hardest part of grief at first. Not the dramatic moments, the routines disappearing. For years, my brain had unconsciously organized itself around another person. Text him after work, buy the coffee he likes, leave space in bed. Then suddenly all those habits have nowhere to go. Ryan left a letter on the kitchen counter. I read it twice. Even then, he still framed everything around his intentions instead of the harm itself. I wanted something bigger for us. I thought you'd understand eventually. I wish you believed in me more. Not once did he fully say what I did was wrong. A week later, an investigator contacted me for follow-up questions regarding the account access and fake screenshots. Because most of the money had been recovered quickly, Ryan eventually accepted a misdemeanor plea agreement, a fine, probation, financial responsibility classes, community service. No jail time. Part of me felt relieved about that. Another part of me felt strangely numb watching someone I once loved slowly become paperwork and case numbers. A few days later, Nolan called and quietly admitted Ryan was still angry at me. "I don't think he knows how to sit with shame very well," Nolan said. That sentence stayed with me. Some people reflect when they hurt someone. Others immediately look for someone else to blame because accepting responsibility threatens the version of themselves they desperately want to preserve. Ryan couldn't stand seeing himself as the villain of his own story, so naturally I became one instead. His mother eventually called too, softer this time. "I owe you an apology," she said quietly. Apparently Nolan had filled in the part she hadn't known yet. The fake texts, the lies, the spending. "I'm sorry for what I said to you." After the call, I walked slowly through the apartment alone. Healing didn't arrive dramatically. Mostly it showed up in small moments. The first peaceful morning. The first weekend without anxiety in my chest. The first night I realized nobody was manipulating my reality anymore. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Ryan, I hope someday you understand I was trying to build a better future for us." I stared at the screen for a long time before locking the phone again. Because after everything, one truth had finally become painfully clear to me. I think that's when I finally understood something simple. Someone who really loves you doesn't make you feel unsafe just to prove you support them. So I let the silence answer for me, this time permanently.